Blog Talk Radio.
Welcome to our program on Kardec Radio. And now, here's our host, Dr. Vanessa Anzalone.
Welcome, dear listener, to Kardec Radio. Today, the show is about the formation of Spiritist groups and societies. Many people have been requesting that we discuss about this topic, and today you'll be able to listen from Kardec's own words. And we'll have here with us friends who will be talking with us, discussing the ideas that were brought in by Allan Kardec. And this will be Adriano Barbo from the Spiritist Center in Mount Vernon. He's going to be here with us discussing these main topics. He's the president and founder of the Mount Vernon Spiritist Center in New York. Also, our dear friend, John Rosa from the Spiritist Society of Virginia. So we'll be here talking about this, and you can always either call in, or if you want, you can email us, or also be here in the chat room at blogtalkradio.com/Kardec Radio. By the way, we want to share the news with you that our sister radio from Miami, Florida, Bezerra Online, is there for you, not only in the English language, but they also have programs in Spanish and in Portuguese. You can access their web radio at Spiritist.com. It's really fun, and it's really, really educational. It's worthwhile spreading the news. By the way, the amazing Dr. Haroldo Dutra Diaz is going to be here in the area of Maryland, Pennsylvania, and Virginia at the beginning of November. You just go to the Spiritist Society of Virginia's website, ssvirginia.org, or the Spiritist Society of Baltimore's website, ssbaltimore.org, to get to know more about the information you need. Also at KardecRadio.com, because Kardec Radio is also one of the sponsors. But he's coming also to Massachusetts, to Boston, on November 2nd and November 3rd. Haroldo Dutra Diaz is going to be there for special conferences, participating on the 6th Spiritist Conference of Massachusetts on the 3rd of November. If you want more information, just go to www.akssma.com. It's the Allan Kardec Spiritist Society of Massachusetts. And on the 10th, there will be the 2nd Spiritist Seminar of Chicago. You can get more information on the whole event at www.spiritistsocietyofchicago.org, and you get to know more about the information. Right now, we are dedicating the show to the understanding of how we form Spiritist groups. How does it happen? Can anybody do it? Can I, out of the blue, start a group? And do I need to get a course or get a certificate to build a group? How does it work? Well, we'll have all the tips and hints from Kardec himself. Meanwhile, we want you to get inspired by getting to know of Kardec's own question and the Spirit answer in the Spirit's book. When they talk about the law of worship, they talk about the practice of a religion, of a philosophy. Kardec asked a question regarding whether or not somebody just practicing a religion that is not from the bottom of their heart, if there is any problem in that regard. And they say, well, in fact, people who do so to respect the beliefs of others, they do no wrong. This is the answer to question 655 of the Spirit's book. However, those who practice a religion out of ulterior motives or ambition are contemptible in the sight of God and humankind. God cannot be pleased with those who only put on a show of humility in order to gain the approval of others. So the main question for us here is, why do you want to form a Spiritist group? Because as they say, the intent is everything. The intention. What is the intention? Is it because you don't have a professional career and you think Spiritist can offer you that type of fulfilling agenda? That wouldn't work. If it is because you want to be together with people because you don't have many friends, probably it's not the right motive. We'll talk about this and much more. For now, we'd like to kickstart the show with a beautiful message by Joana de Angelis from the book and CD Living and Loving that you can find at the web store of the Spiritist out of Baltimore. The message today is about keeping your optimism. After the break, we'll be back with Adriano Barbo, John DeRosa, and many more friends to talk about the formation of Spiritism.
Chapter 6. Keep your optimism.
The dispirited companion who walks by your side may be facing a crucial ordeal. That friend of yours who slipped into delinquency may have tried hard to avoid crime. The other one who succumbed to vice may have fought against it but was not strong enough. The co-worker who discontinued service might have tried to stay in his place but was unable to comply. The friend who suddenly became your enemy may not have been able to overcome his pernicious tendencies. People acting negatively need understanding rather than criticism. Some might have wished to act differently, but could not help themselves. A few others may be secretly trying to fight their negative drives. Many may have already acted as anonymous heroes, but are now in disgrace. All of them need a new opportunity to prove themselves, that they can change their behavior. They may never ask for help. Still, they should be given a new chance. Consider the positive side of people's actions and forget their weaknesses. Do not reject them. It is easy to fraternize with nice and diligent people always willing to cooperate and serve. It is agreeable to enjoy the company of worthy persons. But they also have problems of which you probably know nothing about. The earth is both a school and a hospital for unhealthy souls. Nobody living on earth now is an exception from this rule. It is useless to seek the company of angels, since they are not incarnate on earth now. All people on this planet bear the same characteristics as yourself. They suffer, have their own limitations, and they want to live in peace, and they dream with happiness. Try not to comment on the deficiency of others. If you cannot help them, keep silent and excuse them when they hurt you. Do not be disheartened by their behavior. If you know what you are looking for and are willing to serve, go on acting as you know best, and be gentle to all who come your way. Do not harbor grief or disappointment within your heart. Be an optimist. Help those who have gone astray back to the right road. Abandoned and betrayed, Jesus was never disheartened. Never did he display resentment. He was the great winner of all the battles that life reserved for him.
We will return to our program after these messages.
Come and join us in 3 amazing events this November. The renowned magistrate and Spiritist scholar Dr. Haroldo Dutra Diaz will be the keynote speaker in 3 events. Sunday, November 4th from 1 p.m. to 5 p.m. at the Days Hotel and Conference Center in Westchester, Pennsylvania. This event will be dedicated to the Spiritist view on cancer and healing. Dr. Marco Magalhães and Dr. Vanessa Anceloni will also share the stage with Dr. Dutra Diaz. This event is free admission, and you will also enjoy a beautiful and inspirational Spiritist music and art festival. Don't miss it. Tuesday, November 5th, Haroldo Dutra Diaz will speak at the University of Maryland in Baltimore on the healing parables. And on Wednesday, November 6th, he will speak on the Apostle Paul for Spiritist Practitioners at the Spiritist Society of Virginia Center. For more information, go to www.ssvirginia.org today.
And now we return to our program.
Dear listener, we are here. It's about the formation of Spiritist groups and societies, a topic people have been requesting by email because many people around the world, listeners of Kardec Radio throughout more than 60 countries, have been asking us tips and hints about how to form Spiritist groups. It's not simple. Do we need courses? Do we need certificates? Is there a ministry in itself? How does it work? Well, Kardec has the whole ins and outs about it. All we need to do is to listen, reflect, and deepen our understanding. And to help us in this discussion, we have here with us our dear friend Adriano Barbo, who is the president of the Mount Vernon Spiritist Center in New York. Hi, Adriano. Thank you for being with us at Kardec Radio today.
Hello, Vanessa. Good morning. It's an honor for me to participate with you and all the listeners to Kardec Radio. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Adriano. We also have here with us our friend and member of the Spirit Society of Virginia, John DeRosa. Hi, John. Thank you for being with us today.
Hello, Vanessa. Great to be here.
All right. So we have a hot topic here with us, guys. It's very complex, though it should be simple if we want to hear the words by Kardec, right? Adriano, how do you feel? You have founded a group that now is a center in Mount Vernon. It's been 5 years, right?
Yes, it's been now 5 years and some months. I really feel the weight of directing a Spiritist center in founding a group. It's really responsible that in the beginning we sometimes don't think that will come to us, but as the time goes, we feel it, and it's really, we need to get to Kardec to really get it done the way Kardec wants us to do.
All right. So how about now? People want to know more about it. We would say in 1862, Kardec had a very important trip. He toured around several cities in France and even in Belgium to talk to groups, nuclei of people who were interested on Spiritism. And in one of his famous talks, it was about formation of Spiritist groups. He published them in this little book, but very powerful one, that is entitled The Spiritist Voyage. I mean, it's not in English yet, but at least one of its chapters was recently published in the most current issue of the Spiritist magazine. It's thespiritistmagazine.com. You can read it online, digitally from your tablets, iPhones, iPads, anything, computer-wise, of course, digitally, internet, at the thespiritistmagazine.com website, and it talks about the formation of Spiritist groups and societies. So we're going to listen to the whole excerpt on Kardec's own words, and after that, we'll be with you breaking down what Kardec recommends regarding the formation of groups. Let us listen to this, and in a few minutes, we'll be back to discuss it.
Formation of Spiritist Groups and Societies by Allan Kardec. In various locations, I've been asked for advice on the formation of Spiritist groups. I have little to say on the subject, except for the instructions listed in the Medium's book. I will add only a few in my own words. The first condition is to form a group of serious people, regardless of how small the group is. 5 or 6 more enlightened members, sincere, infused with the truth of the doctrine, and united by the same intention, are worth 100 times more than the inclusion in this group of the curious and indifferent. Secondly, the founding members should establish rules and regulations that will be the equivalent of law for the new adherents. These rules and regulations are very simple and are almost only inclusive of measures of internal discipline, because they do not require the same details that would be needed for a large society or group. Each of these groups can therefore establish themselves as they see fit. However, for greater ease and uniformity, I will state a model at the end of this book, which can be changed as per the circumstances and requirements of the location. In any case, the essential objective of these regulations encompasses the need of concentration, maintenance of the most perfect order, and the distancing of any person that does not have serious intentions which could turn into disturbance. This is why you can never be too severe when admitting new elements into the group. Do not fear that this severity damages the spread of Spiritism. In reality, serious meetings are those that create the most adherents. Frivolous meetings, those that are not conducted with order and dignity, in which the first curious person to appear can leave their fanciful comments, do not inspire any attention or respect, and from them those that do not believe leave less convinced than when they entered. These meetings cause joy to the enemies of Spiritism, in contrast with serious ones, which are their nightmares, and I know of many people that would see their manipulation in a good light so long as the others disappear. Thankfully, the opposite is what occurs. It is necessary to persuade ourselves that the wish to be part of the more serious meeting increases with the degree of challenges. When speaking of propaganda, it is certainly done more by preliminary study and the conduct of the member outside of meetings than by the number of assistants that 1 or 2 meetings cannot convince. The exclusion of women would be to abuse their capacity of judgment, which, and let it be said without flattery, many times is greater than that of men, and even above those of some illustrious critics. The presence of women requires a more rigorous observation of the laws of courtesy and removal of the common negligence present in meetings composed solely by men. Also, why keep them from the moralizing influence of Spiritism? A sincerely Spiritist woman can only be a good daughter, a good wife, and a good mother. Due to their position, often women have more need than anyone else of the sublime consolations of Spiritism, which shall make her stronger and more resigned in the tests of life. Moreover, is it not known that spirits only have a gender for their incarnations? If the equality of the rights of a woman need to be recognized, it must surely be among Spiritists, and the propagation of Spiritism will unfailingly hasten the abolition of the privileges that men have given themselves through the law of the most powerful. The advent of Spiritism will mark the era of the legal emancipation of women. Nor should you fear the admission of the young. The seriousness of the Spiritist assembly will reflect in their character, and at their proper time they will become more serious and will from this early age draw on, through the teachings of good spirits, this living faith in God and in the future, this sentiment of familial duty that will make them more docile, more respecting, and will moderate their passions. When speaking of legal formalities, there are not in France any to speak of for meetings that do not exceed 20 people. Above this number, regular and periodic meetings should be authorized, unless a tolerance that cannot be seen as a right, of which the great majority of Spiritist groups enjoy, due to their peaceful character, exclusively moral, and also because they do not constitute affiliations or associations. In any circumstance, Spiritists need to be first to give example of submission to the laws, should their application be required. Recently, there has been the formation of special groups, whose multiplication we will never cease to encourage. They are the so-called study groups. In these, they occupy themselves little or nothing with spirit manifestations, but instead with the readings and explanation of the Spirit's book, the Medium's book, and some articles from the Spiritist magazine. Some devoted people bring together this objective and a certain number of listeners in order to lessen their difficulties of reading and studying individually. We applaud with all our hearts this initiative, which we hope will be emulated and cannot, throughout its development, stop producing the happiest results. In these groups, there is no necessity of being an orator or professor. These meetings encompass of reading passages, like in a family setting, followed by explanations without pretensions of eloquence, and are within the reach of all people. Without making this the exclusive objective of their occupation, many groups have the habit of initiating sessions with the reading of passages from the Spirit's book or the Medium's book. We would be happy if we saw this practice, whose efficacy is to call attention to certain principles that could be misunderstood or skimmed over by all groups. In this case, it is useful for the leader or president of these groups to prepare the passages that will construct the objective of the lesson beforehand, in order to tailor this choice to the circumstances. I hope that you do not think it bad that I indicate these works as foundations for learning, being as they are unique in that Spiritist science is developed in all its parts, and in a methodical fashion. But they would incur me in error those that would judge me exclusive to the point of dismissing other works, in which many surely deserve the sympathy of all good Spiritists. Moreover, in a complete study, it is necessary to examine everything, even that which is bad. I also consider the reading of criticisms to be very useful, for they highlight the emptiness and the lack of logic. Certainly, they do not contain even a single one capable of shaking the faith of a sincere Spiritist. It cannot but strengthen it, as they have fostered in many disbelievers that have compared them. The same can be said of certain works that, despite being created with a serious purpose, still contain manifest errors and eccentricities, which must be highlighted. There is another habit whose adoption is no less useful. It is essential that each group collect and review received spirit communications, so that they may be more easily accessed as needed. The spirits that see their instructions ignored will quickly abandon the meetings. But it is necessary, above all, that a separate, special collection be created, organized, and clear of the Spirit's communications that are the most beautiful and instructive, and read again some of them during each session, so as to utilize them better.
Dear listener, you can find the whole transcript of Kardec's own words in the Spiritist magazine current issue, which is issue 19th, at the website, thespiritistmagazine.com. It's accessible free of charge. An amazing issue to troubleshoot Spiritist centers, including tips and hints for formation of Spiritist groups and societies. So now we are here with our dear Adriano. Adriano, what is the major thing that comes to your mind, Adriano, in regard to Kardec's tips and hints about the formation of groups?
The first thing that comes to my mind, the first thing that he mentions is about the serious members, and it's about the serious people that have been wanting to found a group. I think seriousness doesn't acquire from day to night. It's something that we have. It's a process. So I think to acquire this seriousness, to found a group, it's become from many years before or even for a life. So I can give my example. Sometimes we just think that, we go into the Spiritist center of someone else, and then from the day to night, we just open in a group for a study. And like Kardec saying to us, we should be serious. And then we say to ourselves, for now on, we're going to be serious because we're going to found a group. It's not going to happen because, sometimes, like I said, it's a process to be serious. And there's many things including in being serious. It's a discipline, it's a hard working, it's a studying very much. And telling my example, like I said before, a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Back before starting the group, I was in a Spiritist center. And many people know that I worked very hard over there. And I knew from before all the difficulties, or most of the difficulties that includes working in a Spiritist center and opening a Spiritist center or study group. So as when I started the group, I already knew many of the challenges that will be in our way of opening a group. So I was already being prepared before, not just, I said to myself, for now on, I'm going to be serious about it. So as Kardec is saying us here, there's many things including here. There's rules and regulations, conditions for meetings, propaganda, and all those things should be, faced with seriousness. And that's a long process that we might have in mind before thinking about opening a group.
Exactly.
That comes to me.
Exactly, Adriano. And as you're saying this, if we go to the dictionary, the Merriam-Webster, serious is somebody who is thoughtful and requires much thought and work, and is someone who is deeply interested. And nowadays we see many people just saying, I want to form a group. Why? Why do you want to form a group? Oh, because I just want to, be around people. Or, for example, in the case of people who are out of their native countries, like, for example, their homeland, for example, us as Brazilians or others who are immigrants, some people are just forming groups just to have their, social club. And this is not serious. If you miss your country, founding a Spiritist group is not going to be the way to go, because that's not the reason why. As Kardec pointed out in his question, and then the answer of the Spirit, they say the intent is the rule. Question and answer 655. If those who practice a religion out of ulterior motives or ambition, they are to be ashamed before God, in the sense of it's not the right reason. We need to be deeply interested and deeply engaged. And as Adriana is pointing out, as the more serious the meeting, the more challenges they will present. And Spiritism is not a mass movement. If it were so, we would have it mainstream everywhere, like so many other things have already happened. It requires a lot of thoughtfulness, a lot of work. Right, John, you wanted to say something.
I was just curious about, Adriana, whether you started a study group before you decided to go into your center.
Adriano.
I didn't understand what was that, sorry.
What, you originally were in a center at first, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And then you decided that you wanted to start a center yourself, and I was curious, if I was to go about it myself, I think I would get involved and start a study group first, and I was curious as to the steps that you took to go about this.
No, actually, I mixed up things. I started a group study first. Actually, starting my apartment was 2 years before we opened a Spiritist center. I was still working in the other Spiritist center that originally I went for studying. And then we decided to open a group at my home. And after 2 years of studying in my home, we gather a group of people, serious people, and then we open a Spiritist center, for the major public to come.
So so using the study group as a way to filter out those serious people from the non-serious people, you were able to determine who would be your allies in forming this center, correct?
Correct, yes, because the other Spiritists were far away, and there were many people around me that was going there too, and many of them weren't serious. So by starting my home, I would know everyone that will come and observing them as myself too, and we'll be reflecting on the needs of the population as well as our needs. And then we come up with the conclusion to open a Spiritist center after 2 years at my home. But while we were studying in my home, we were working as well in the other Spiritist center. We didn't abandon the other Spiritist center by just opening a group at our home, at my home.
And by the way, Adriano, the reason why you did this was not out of dissension. You did this because, for example, in your case, you were studying a group that was in Queens, whereas you guys were in Mount Vernon. So it's like, it's not that you guys, were just, we don't agree or this or the other. You just formed like us in Baltimore when we were participating in the group in Rockville, and there was no center in Baltimore, and then we formed a study group in Baltimore before becoming a center, also because it's important to form small groups. Some people think that forming new groups, we are just creating problems like, you don't like my groups, that why? No, I have been telling people, ideally, Kardec says it's better to form small groups, and many of them around, because they are more heterogeneous, more homogeneous than large groups that have more heterogeneous mindset and creating problems, right?
Right. Actually, talking about seriousness, one thing that I know for sure, before we open even a group or a Spiritist center, the spirits will test us very much before they let us open a group. I'm sure of that, because since I started going to the Spiritist Center, I've been tested a lot in the other spirits that I was starting to study. And after all many years of very serious tests, it was very hard for me to accomplish my work in far away of my home, going to the Spiritist Center, studying all the studies that the Spirit Center offered, and there was hard things to overcome. And after a while, I think they saw that I was very serious about working in Spiritism, and then we started little by little. But I tell you that all the Spiritist group may be tested, and when they feel tested a lot, I think they will know that they are serious here.
Exactly.
That's one hint.
Mm-hmm. Let us just recap. It's like a short paragraph that Kardec, in which he told about the first condition. He's saying the first condition is about serious members. Let us just listen again to that little excerpt so we can continue.
The first condition is to form a group of serious people, regardless of how small the group is. 5 or 6 more enlightened members, sincere, infused with the truth of the doctrine, and united by the same intention, are worth 100 times more than the inclusion in this group of the curious and indifferent.
So as we are seeing here, right, Kardec was he was an amazing educator, and he puts right there the first condition, serious people. So if I am thinking, oh my God, I want to form a group, the question is, what is the intention? Why do you want to do this? Elizabeth Mason here is asking in the chat room of Kardec Radio. Hi, Elizabeth, and thank you for your question. Is it valid to start a study group in an area where Spiritism is unknown with the intent of dissemination? Well, Kardec has a topic in this text about propaganda, dissemination. And, of course, we want to open the doors for other people to join in and learn and practice it. But the question is, do I need it? Because if I am doing this to others alone without the recognition that it is for my inner growth first and foremost, it's going to be complicated. Because as Adriano said, quoting from Kardec, the challenges are going to mount as it becomes more serious. And some people don't have resistances and endurance to go by the challenges of forming a group just out of, outreach. Because sometimes reaching out to people without an inner need is much more complicated. Adriano, when you open the group, you also open for your personal need as well, because you live in Mount Vernon, right?
Oh, yes, definitely. It was most for me. I was in need of studying more, growing myself, and the people that are around me that agreed as well to study with me, they were with that same intention for ourselves. And then after those years studying, that we were so sure that were helping us a lot, we were prepared to offer as well for many other people that would come to join us in the Spiritist Center. And then we decided that firstly it was just for us. The idea in the beginning was just for us, and then it amplified as well for other people. And there is one thing that people may think before starting Spiritist group is that people use that, no, it's just going to be a small group just for us. We're going to invite some people, but you won't grow, you won't have many challenges or difficulties because it's going to be very small, no many responsibilities, just for them. And then if that is wrong, because it's totally things comes up. People start coming, problems start coming because people carry a problem with them as well as us. And then come to us for us to help them. And then it comes out that it's not just for a small little group. More than that. Even though we think that's just a little bit, it's more. And then that's why we got surprised and unprepared for it.
And when you're talking about this, last show we had the spiritual dimensions of the Spiritist Center, and he talks about, the behind the scenes of a formation of a group that actually it's planned out by the spirits. So we think it's like, oh, it's my idea, etc. It's not. And we are not even the ones who are doing this. But in another book, Torments of Obsession, that we are translating and coordinating the study at the Spirit Society of Baltimore every Thursday, in one of its chapters, which is chapter 7, it talks about cases of people who embrace Spiritism for them, and later they lost track, and they were doing things out of, just external purposes, not like inner purposes. And they started being very judgmental, attacking people, and creating embarrassments, etc. And it shows the afterlife consequences, which are very dramatic. Not only the afterlife, in that very life, the steps, the errors they incurred, and the problems they created for them, for their families, for the groups, and the afterlife consequences. So at the end of the chapter, Dr. Manuel Filomena de Miranda shared with us through the hands of Divaldo Franco, saying, we need to practice Spiritism for inner growth. So we would say, if you want to create a group to disseminate Spiritism, ask first, am I doing this to disseminate it to myself first? because I am the one who need it first. It's not selfish. It's out of realization and humility that we're the ones who need it first. And that is going to keep me going. No matter who comes and goes, no matter how many people are in a group, it's going to keep the feel of my soul going to sustain in the material realm with the help and the guidance of the good spirits, the group that we have formed. Otherwise, if I just do it out of that external motive, it's going to be much harder to keep going if we don't realize where we are in that regard. John, you want to say something?
No, it's really, really curious, because when I got involved with Spiritism, it was just for that particular reason. And at times I used to think that was selfish, but obviously it isn't, because the desire to improve is an innate thing that we are born in this particular lifetime to evolve, to enlighten ourselves. And Spiritism, to me, gives you that such a wonderful opportunity to do that.
Exactly. So now, Kardec talks about the rules and regulations as well, which is interesting because anybody in the world, they can found a group, a Spiritist group. It's fascinating in the sense of there is no like papacy, like, oh, let me talk to the Pope, to the Bishop, or do courses, or ask for the blessings and permissions, or have certificates. Now I'm a minister, etc. No, it doesn't come with external features. It comes with inner conscience, which is, I would say, psychologically speaking, very challenging because it depends on a lot of discernment, awareness, and deep conscientiousness that you're doing this to yourself and to the greater good, but you need to prepare yourself constantly and non-stoppably to unfold it. And Kardec says we need rules and regulations in the group, which is somewhat for people not understandable, because they're like, really? Can't we just open and whatever happens, we just keep on going because the teachings are going to be understood? So, Adriano, what do you think about this statement when Kardec asks about when he proposes that there must be rules and regulations, though they may be very simple according to the size of the group?
Yeah, I very agree with Kardec, and we see the challenge to have even simple regulations and rules in the Spiritist centers. As many people will come and they don't know really that the Spiritist center needs that regulations. And when we have some regulations to really, maintain the discipline and maintain the order in the Spiritist center for the help of everyone, for the sake of our own safety and good, as well for the good of the Spiritists to enter the heart of people. Even some members that start helping us, when we present them the rules and regulations, they sometimes disagree. And that may happen that some people even leave the Spiritist center, feel hurted because we present them some regulations that they may follow to maintain the order of the group. And we are not so serious in compromise with Spiritists. We ended up, opening the space for not, having those rules because we don't want to, really upset people that they are in goodwill to help.
Hey, Adriano, let's why don't you pick out one or two things that really disturb some people that you had as a rule and regulation?
Like examples. What
yes.
would be examples?
What would be the examples? One of the regulations that I really had a little problem with was with the past givers. We had a regulations that a person that's really coming with very serious illness problem that might, in a certain care of the doctors, they wouldn't be able to apply the healing path, the Spiritist path, and it come up that one of our members that was helping us, it was already in our regulations, but we didn't know that this person was having this problem, and she didn't tell us. And then after many times, we come up to know that, and then we presented her that this person, that it was not able for her to continue her work because it was the rules for the safety of herself and for the members. And then she ended up abandoning the Spiritist Center because she didn't want to comply with that rule that we come up to have. And there are many others, simple ones, like time for people to, especially for the collaborators, to start the work. Some of them didn't want to really comply with that simple rule, and some of them really didn't want to help anymore because of that. It's just two examples that may, come to us.
Exactly. And as Adriana is saying this, what we have done, for example, the Spirit side of Virginia, to prevent problems, not only ask, but prevent it, is about the welcome kit for people who come in, and they have a welcome kit that talks about what is the society, so the newcomers would receive it, having the rules and regulations, including dress code and the ins and outs, and even a few questions like, I want to be a medium. So there it already responds, what do you do? Oh, I want to be a fast giver. Oh, I want to do this and that. And there it tells them, it's like a road map for them about what it is. It doesn't solve all the problems. But, for example, we had a problem once in one of the centers we participate, in which one day during the passage session, a person who was in the group of practitioners just stood up and went outside to answer a phone call. And we didn't say anything at the time. This was during the passage session. And then after the meeting, we talked to the person and said, look, you can't answer your phone during the passage session, no matter what it is, because this is like a therapeutic moment. And then the person was upset. It's like, oh, but it's my babysitter is calling. What if my children have a problem? I said, that's why you have a babysitter. The babysitter is taking care of your child. And you can't unless, and if you think you need to answer the phone no matter what, you prioritize, because you can't be in the Spiritist Center during the session answering your phone call because it's disturbing the general good. It's when Kardec says, this is the challenge. If I have a problem of that nature and I think that's a priority, then you shouldn't be in the center at that time. So it's about the general good. We cannot be selfish, thinking about ourselves only. And that's one of the examples. The general good is the priority. That's why rules and regulations are needed to secure the general good and the works that are being done for everything. Let us listen from Kardec when he talks about rules and regulations followed by conditions for meeting, so we can keep discussing.
Secondly, the founding members should establish rules and regulations that will be the equivalent of law for the new adherents. These rules and regulations are very simple and are almost only inclusive of measures of internal discipline, because they do not require the same details that would be needed for a large society or group. Each of these groups can therefore establish themselves as they see fit. However, for greater ease and uniformity, I will state a model at the end of this book, which can be changed as per the circumstances and requirements of the location. In any case, the essential objective of these regulations encompasses the need of concentration, maintenance of the most perfect order, and the distancing of any person that does not have serious intentions, which could turn into disturbance. This is why you can never be too severe when admitting new elements into the group. Do not fear that this severity damages the spread of Spiritism. In reality, serious meetings are those that create the most adherents. Frivolous meetings, those that are not conducted with order and dignity, in which the first curious person to appear can leave their fanciful comments, do not inspire any attention or respect, and from them those that do not believe leave less convinced than when they entered. These meetings cause joy to the enemies of Spiritism, in contrast with serious ones, which are their nightmares, and I know of many people that would see their manipulation in a good light so long as the others disappear. Thankfully, the opposite is what occurs. It is necessary to persuade ourselves that the wish to be part of the more serious meeting increases with the degree of challenges.
We will return to our program after these messages.
Wait and love always. Much affliction will be cut at the root if you learn how to smile in silence. Many grudges will be forgotten if you forgive the inequity you implore for the peace of the Lord. But the Lord equally awaits your participation in the peace of others. Reflect on the needs of your brother before you criticize his thoughtless deeds. Oftentimes, the aggressiveness with which he hurts you is only his anguish, and the rude word which he uses to return your care is nothing but the wound in his heart poisoning his mouth. Aid 1,000 times before you disapprove only once. The swamp admits ailing currents, for it did not find hands to dry it out. And the desert brings on thirst and suffering, for it did not receive the morning dew. Allow mercy to develop into silent help in your heart, so that pain may fade away. Do not fuel the fire of evil with the dry log of irritation and hate. Wait and love always. In silence, the prune tree multiplies its own fruits, and the sky, overtaken by the nocturnal shadows, reveals the glory of the stars. Think of Christ, our silent friend. Without demands or self-acclaim, he wrote the immortal poems of forgiveness and love, hope and happiness in the heart of the earth. Let's make him our model in our daily struggles, and by tolerating and helping today in this short human existence, we will reap tomorrow the blessings of the silent light, which will show us the ways to eternal life.
And now we return to our program.
Yeah, dear listener, this is a prayer of service by Emmanuel through Chico Xavier. You can acquire this and much more at the CD, Enlightening Messages, or the book, Enlightening Messages as well, by the Spiritist Society of Baltimore. Just go to www.ssbaltimore.org and you can get your CD and or book. Now, we were talking about the formation of groups, as Kardec talked about, the first condition being of serious people, and I don't think we should encourage people to form groups just because, I'm living in China, I'm Spiritist and I'm Brazilian, should I form a group so I get together with the Brazilians? I don't think this is the best way to go. According to what Kardec says, we don't form groups because we miss our country. This is a big mistake. These groups become not serious because they become merely social clubs, and it's a big no-no. Serious people are those who are deeply interested in Spiritism, not in a specific culture or nationality. It's not about, now we are helping one another. So you can help one another, form an association of Brazilian people, but do not use Spiritism as an excuse because you're missing the country. I'm saying this because Brazilians are the ones who usually open groups around the world, and thank God we do it. But we need to remind people, you do not open a Spiritist group because you miss your country. That is not the intention. That is not going to be helpful. We're just talking also about the rules and regulations, the need. And if people don't like rules and regulations, they shouldn't be in a Spiritist center, because rules and regulations are the spinal cord of the center. No wonder Emmanuel told Chico Xavier, you want to help? Discipline, discipline, discipline. There's no other way. And this is not harsh or dictatorship. By the way, it's interesting. Once in the Spiritist group of Virginia, we were discussing, and a member of the group asked, Vanessa, isn't there democracy in the Spiritist concept? And then I said, that's a good question, because really I've never read any Spiritist book that talks about democracy. Every group, every book, serious book, from Kardec to books received by Chico Xavier, by Divaldo Franco, Raul Teixeira, and others, they all talk about the need of order. That's not dictatorship. It's a democracy based on credit and merit, meaning we obey the higher forces, the ones that know more, the ones that are more dedicated and devoted. No wonder Jesus said, if you want to be the greatest of all, you need to serve the more that you can and more than everybody else. That's how it goes. If people don't like order, they shouldn't be there. Now, you want to ask something or say something, John? No?
About the...
Yeah.
Adriano, I was curious, that first example that you gave, could you explain that a little better?
About the passes, right?
About the passes, yes. I couldn't quite figure it out.
Yeah, before Adriana goes there, I just want to mention that Elizabeth Mason also had a question in that regard, because we were mentioning about rules and regulations for pass givers, and Elizabeth probably also wants more clarification, because she asks, I can understand that there should be a strict timetable for Spiritist works, but is it not true that a medium should carry on with giving the passes even if he or she is having problems? Does working not help a medium overcome problems? Adriana, what do you think?
Well, I won't say what problem this person will go through, but I would say that, let's give an example. This person will come into a risk that in the session they applying pass.
He just dropped the line. Okay, we're going to bring Adriano in. Something happened with his connection. But in the meantime, we want to share with you that Kardec had a specific statement about the propaganda. I mean, should we be concerned? Because nowadays, as groups are formed, the first thing people think is, oh my God, I should draw in more people. It's natural. People are like, oh my God. I don't see Chico Xavier thinking about that question, or Divaldo Franco, or even Kardec, even Allan Kardec, like, oh my God, what should we do to draw in more people? So why not? Let us listen from Kardec, and we'll be back with you and Adriano.
When speaking of propaganda, it is certainly done more by preliminary study and the conduct of the member outside of meetings than by the number of assistants that one or two meetings cannot convince.
are here with, dear listener, we are here, and Adriano is in with us. Adriano, we just missed you, but you're back here with us. So what about that, the rules and regulations and the severity sometimes that the rules need to be applied? I mean, can you discuss what John DeRosa was asking and Elizabeth Mason?
He was asking about the example that I gave. I was understanding it well, or
yeah, that's correct. That's correct. If you just go
about
over that.
The person that was suspended because of her, health problem, right?
Correct.
Yeah, I was saying that this person was very serious problem. She was coming to risk to have a crisis in the middle of the session. Imagine if that person would have a crisis and faint or something much more serious than that, and would took this person to the hospital. And imagine all the people around see that, it wasn't good for the Spiritist Center and even for her. We see that the Spiritist provides the fluid, the resource, but we give from ourselves too. And that was the risk that was taken too. And then we had a regulation for that. I wouldn't say that the problem that this person was having, but it was very serious, not just a headache or something, mild.
Oh.
And in this, this person knew that. She knew because we took all the Spiritist resource to show that person, but she didn't want to understand because we had many other works in the past, the Spiritist Center that this person could help, but that person wanted only to give passes.
Oh, I see. So she specifically wanted to concentrate just on passes and not to do anything else?
Yes, that's right. And there are many other regulations that, as Kardec was saying, people will run away even for simple regulations. Even another very
like starting on time. Starting on time.
Starting on time, or we had a little regulation. It's specified for a Spiritist Center. It's not for everyone, just that we adopted because we thought it was better for us. We had our snacks and something that we present to people, and then we decided to have just juice, natural juice for people. And we had many volunteers in the kitchen for helping that. Many people didn't agree with that. They wanted to serve everything, a soda and everything. Then we told, no, we have a regulation here. We just serve natural juice. And many people decided not to help because they thought that we were too strict. See, that just simple things like that. Sometimes people don't want to comply.
I understand. That's a great example because it's such a very, very basic thing that you would think you would get general consensus to go along with that, but people are not as disciplined as they need to be, and that's one way of finding out who is really serious about Spiritism.
Exactly, and we see nowadays many people who are not deeply interested in Spiritism, and they are just interested in getting together with people and reminiscing about their homeland using Spiritist centers. I think this is really shameful and totally against the teachings of Kardec. As the Spirit said, 655, you cannot practice a religion out of ulterior motive. You need to practice it per the real interest in it. And this is not being too harsh because Kardec was really, really serious. He was not the type of person that would just get together just to, get together. He would really, really be serious. No wonder he accomplished so much. Now, when we talk about the seriousness, the regulations, the conditions for a meeting, which he says quite clearly are the need of concentration and maintaining, he says, the most perfect order and distancing any person who does not have serious intention and could turn it into disturbance. These are Kardec's own words. Kardec's own words. He said, need of concentration. and maintenance of most perfect order, and distancing of any person who would create problems. Unfortunately, or not, this is how it goes. In the Medium's book, chapters 29 and 30, people will find more rules and regulations for Spiritist meetings and groups, and we would recommend, as Kardec did in this article, and in one of the items, which is item 341, Kardec discloses the conditions through which higher spirits can come in and help us. If we don't follow through these conditions, he says, bad spirits will come in to the meeting. So John De Rosa will kindly read through these conditions, which is chapter 29 of the Medium's book, item 341.
Perfect commonality of ideas and sentiments, mutual benevolence among members, rejection of every sentiment contrary to true Christian charity, a single desire to learn and improve through good spirits' teachings, and the taking advantage of their counsels. Whoever is convinced that highly evolved spirits manifest for the purpose of enabling us to progress and not simply to please us will understand that they must avoid those who limit themselves to admiring their style without profiting from their words, and who are only attracted to sessions due to the greater or lesser interest they offer according to their individual taste. Avoidance of anything in communicating with spirits that is intended solely for satisfying one's curiosity. Respectful concentration and silence during conversations with spirits. Associations of all participants through their thought when evoking spirits. Harmony amongst all mediums, rejecting any sentiment of pride, vanity, and superiority, while supporting the sole desire to make themselves useful.
How does it feel, John?
Stimulating.
Stimulating. What about you, Adriano? What do you think about this Kardec's conditions that he puts out for the conditions to attract good spirits to our meetings versus and avoiding bad ones, as he says?
Yeah, he really knew what he was saying, because it's really what happens when we don't really put that in price. We see that sometimes people in these meetings are off guard. That naturally happens sometimes, and if we are very observant, we're going to see the results not so good as when the people are very serious, like in meditation, thinking in the results in a way that we can help ourselves and the people that might be benefited from our work. And it's very interesting when the results is changed from the time that people are very, concentrated in a way that, that Kardec said in the off guard. We see it happening. Even in the personal time, we see them when the meetings are not going so well because we're facing problems or off guard. And the people from the group, sometimes they call us and start explaining the nights or the day that they had. It wasn't so good. They were disturbed. There were spirits around them, perturbating them. Even the daily lives, they suffer it because they weren't, in a proper condition for the help of the good ones. And as well, when they are off guard, they attract not so good ones to disturb themselves or ourselves.
So this also reminds us to the fact, as we placed in the most current issue of the Spiritist magazine, Troubleshooting the Spiritist Center, there we talked about, and we brought in messages that talk about exactly what Kardec says here. If we have the feeling of competition in a group, people who are disputing positions, people who are disputing point of views, etc. This is a good magnet for bad spirits, because good spirits do not stay where people have a competitive agenda where they're disputing point of views, and especially when they're disputing with the leader. I am always amazed, Adriano, and you as a president of a center may also tell about it. When people come to a center, which is already like established, they come in the first day and they start giving like opinions about how things should be, the dynamics should be changed, etc. And I always ask myself, I mean, how can they think they don't even contribute to the center, that they are entitled to giving, to being at that level, criticizing or thinking that they know more. Sometimes they come to groups that have 10, 12, 15 years. They just arrived, they were well welcomed and embraced, and they come in criticizing, thinking they know better. I think this is so much pride, right? You probably faced it as well as a leader. Kardec did as well. We see it in posthumous works. What do you think in that regard? What should we tell the coordinators and leaders of groups to do in these cases?
I think every Spiritist center faces that. People want to criticize and give their ideas instead of really put hands-on working, offering their idea, but as well offering to help and give their best. And I think all the coordinators, the people that will thinking to open the book, to be open to that possibility that surely will happen. And treat these people with the most charity possible, loving them but not letting them, come to our Spiritist center, to our institution, and bothers us with their unfounded ideas, not really reasonable ideas, and not wanting to help. And we're going to face them actually every month or every week. And for sure, some of them are not even conscious about their attitudes. Some of them, like you said, they are directed by obsessors, the spiritual entities that want to disturb us. Mm-hmm. And once we attend them with the most charitable possible, with love, but not, I said, agreeing with them in their ideas, they will surely go away or even will transform themselves to be really good helpers. Mm-hmm. Some way, but surely going to happen. It will be open to that possibility, and for the people that will want to open a Spiritist group.
So, Adriano, some of these people that come in, as you just mentioned, do turn around and become very helpful.
Yes, some of them might happen to help. Actually, not quite a few, just say the truth. But many of them, most of them actually turn back to their, daily lives and come back. But it happened that one of them or two will happen to really be helpful. That's why we may, attend them with the most charity possible, with love. But like I said, with firm conviction within our principles that the Spiritist brings us, with seriousness. And they feel it. They feel it when we are serious and very kind. And the ones, may sometimes change with time.
It's extremely important that, as you mentioned, to treat them with proper respect and kindness, because as soon as you do that, that puts them, it sort of disarms them. And they really don't know what to do. But it never hurts to listen to somebody. You may not agree, but you also may learn something.
Mm-hmm. That's true. You're right.
Yes, you're right. We'll listen, but, as we're in charge of the behind the scenes, it's pretty hard for, ideally, people should come into a center, respect, participate, as Adriano was saying. We need to put hands-on in the work that exists, and then throughout time we will partake into developing the sessions. But Kardec says it all when he talks about the concern of propaganda. Should we be concerned? Let us listen briefly to a few words that he talks about it.
When speaking of propaganda, it is certainly done more by preliminary study and the conduct of the member outside of meetings than by the number of assistants that 1 or 2 meetings cannot convince.
So, again, Kardec talks to us about the propaganda is in our behavior. Now, again, here he's not saying, well, if you want to open a group, be a saint. This is the condition. He never said. He says he needs serious people, people who are deeply interested in working. And we need to tell right off the bat to all participants of the group, look, the people who are coming and facilitating the sessions, the coordinators, the president, they're not saints. They are serious people who are committed to it. So you don't need to find in them, and you shouldn't, a new guru for you, because that's what people sometimes are mistaken about, that we should, go there and create that type of environment. So let us see here. Our dear Karina Menezes had a question, and we're going to answer as we go to the next topic. She asks, how many people is necessary for starting a study group? Is it okay to start a study group involving those that are emotionally in need of assistance? Kardec actually talks about it, Karina. He says that it's commendable to start a study group, and for your own needs. That's how you start it. I mean, you start for yourself. It's mistaken when people start a group just to, disseminate to others without thinking of themselves. But he says the study groups are very important. And he says we applaud the initiative. And how many people do you need? Well, 2 is a good number. 2 is a good number. Look at Chico Xavier. Chico Xavier started studying Spiritism with a couple. Thanks to that couple, he started learning about Spiritism and practicing mediumship. Divaldo Franco, it was him, Uncle Nilson, and another lady who started the group before they put together a center. And that's how it goes. Eurípides Barçanufo, the great mind of Brazilian Spiritist movement, he also started a group with a few people who were family, friends, and that's how it goes by. But we don't have the pretension of starting a group, a center right away. It's like, let's found a center without having a group. You need a group of affinity, a group of people who need. And if you are the first one who needs it, go for it. Get somebody next to you, like maybe your partner, a friend, a family member, and get together. How does it go by? Kardec's going to talk about it. After the break, we'll talk more about this. For now, Adriano, as you said, when you started the group, you started it amongst people who were your roommates, right?
Yes, my roommates and some of our friends that lived by. They were coming to my home to study.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and one of them who helped you, Eduardo Guimarães, later he himself also found another center, and he was working in the Spiritist center in which you were affiliated, and he started assisting you in the study groups in your home, and later he also found his center. Am I right?
Yes, he was in the same Spiritist center. When we start our group, study group, he started, the first day he came in. Once in a while, I asked him to come and help us because he had much more experience than I had and our group had, the group. And then later on, he actually coming up to open a Spiritist center as the same time that we opened our Spiritist center. 1 month difference from one another, but he helped us a lot in our beginning as a group, a study group, and as well as a Spiritist center. We were very fraternal, helping one another since that.
Now, there is an excerpt from this article in which Kardec talks about the need to comply with the law. Let us listen to this and make comments about it.
Spiritists need to be first to give example of submission to the laws, should their application be required.
He was talking about this in regards to the formalities in France at the time, because they were under a very strict a very strict political time in France at Kardec's time, with Napoleon and his authoritarian regimen. And they couldn't allow groups to get together in more than 20 people. So Kardec was telling, look, we need to respect the law. And only with permission, like Kardec had permission, and they could open for more people. But here he's telling us about Spiritists to be the first to give example of submission to the laws. And André Luiz, in the Spirit André Luiz, through Chico Xavier, he goes to the in the book Among Brothers of Other Lands, first chapter, he talks about Spiritists who need to be the first ones to know the laws of the country they're living in and respecting. So we would say it's important to comply with the laws. If I am going to do anything in the Spiritist Center, I need to comply with the law, personally speaking and collectively speaking. I mean, it seems so second nature. It's so like common sense, right? But why is Kardec telling that to us? Adriana, you want to say something?
Oh, yes, you really need to comply with the laws. When you start a Spiritist group, like just a study group in our home, you just don't really, I think, to go to the city and get permits and so on. But since we started Spiritism for the public, we go to much more responsibility. And we get the CO for having people in inspection for the place as well, and all the requirements that the city requires, because we, as know, from different states or cities, here in New York, it's like there's different cities, different laws that applies for the community. And in our case, there are many laws, many requirements that we need that in New Jersey they don't need, or even New York, Manhattan they don't need, or need more than us. But we should know all those things to really open for public people. They will come, that may happen something to them or to our group, and then not to damage the image, not only from the institution, and as well for the Spiritism itself, that will in a way bothers the authorities or people around. So it's very common sense, like I said.
Adriano, when you started your study group, there wasn't any particular requirements you had to follow as far as the city or the county was concerned, was there?
Not the study group. It's my home, right? In my apartment, there was just a few people, like 3, 4 people, 5 people at most. But in the Spiritist Center, we opened the doors for anyone to come. That's really needed to go to the city and ask for information, what I should do, giving them the explanations, what our work would be about, and then they put us in a category that they had there that would comply with the space, the requirements of the space, that we put people, the inspection from the fire department, and many other things that we needed to really open the doors for it.
Did you have any particular trouble in talking to the city or the county about these particular regulations?
Yeah, we had kind of many little problems regarding first the space, because we are not a church itself, but in some way we are religious too, and they have many kind of categories in the city hall that we put our institution, and then we said to them, you're going to put yourself as a church, and then we said, no, we're not a church, so what you are? And then we explained that, and they said, you don't have a category for you here. And then because depending on the activity that we have, it's a different place in the city that we should do it. And then we got a long discussion and research to really find a place that applied to that requirement of the city. That's one of the difficulties in the beginning that we had.
They had trouble categorizing you.
Yes, because the first thing is about church. In our city, there's so many churches that they said, if you're a church, there's no space for you in this city. It's not legal, and my lawyer told us later. But if you're a church, you should wait for a church to close, then you open yours. So one of the things that we faced in the beginning, fortunately, we are not a church. That was something that happened.
So it took time to convince them that you weren't a church.
Yeah, you said them that we're not a church. They believed us, but they wanted us to. They presented many categories, and then they said you should put your place one of them. Otherwise, you don't have your permit to.
Understand.
To do your job.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So, when we talk about kindness, Carlos is here reminding us of the category that we have established, the Spiritist side of Baltimore and the Spirit side of Virginia. We established it as educational nonprofit organization to go by what Kardec put together as an educational one or charitable one, as Adriano is saying. But we would say never, ever form a group or incorporate it, a Spiritist group as a church, because it's going to do a disservice to Spiritism. If you do it, talk to your the National Federation. If you're in the United States, talk to the American Spiritist Council. If you are in Canada, to the Canadian Spiritist Council. If you're in England, to the British Spiritist Council, and so on and so forth in each and every country, because forming it as a church officially is not going to help. But let us go back to the topic that Kardec talked about. Kardec was very assertive, and he said, "You never be too severe when admitting new members to the group." And this is Kardec, friends. Whether we're sensitive or not, oh my God, we need to be kind. Yes, we need to be kind, but we need to be firm as well. And this is how I go about. Just to illustrate, as Karina is asking us, how do we overcome negative thinking and distrust? And sometimes even with kindness, people can be difficult to take the next step towards understanding and acceptance. And that is very true, Karina. No matter how kind we are, depending on the level of people, they may really be a bother to the group or disturb. As Kardec says here, it wouldn't be so if we were in Jupiter. But we are on Earth, and on Earth it happens. So just to give an example, Karina, to how we should come across this problem, let's take our guiding model, Jesus. In a book entitled Contos e Apólogos by the spirit Humberto de Campos, or Brother X, through the mediumistic hands of Chico Xavier, there is a chapter, which is chapter 2, entitled The Intellectual Candidate. He talks about Jesus when he was disseminating the teachings, and many people were not understanding it. And one day he was sought after by a candidate who had a deep intellectual capacity. And he came along, and Jesus started explaining very kindly the ins and outs of the organization, of what he was doing. And then the candidate asked several questions, and Jesus was replying to them very kindly. Oh, this is how we do it. And you can read the whole chapter if you go online, buy the book at Amazon.com in Portuguese. Unfortunately, it's not in English yet, but hopefully one day it will. And at the very end, after asking many questions to Jesus, how do you do this? How do you do that? How do that, the other, blah, blah, blah. Like many people when they come to Spiritist centers. They want to ask, they ask. And at the end, kindly, Jesus said to him in the following way. Then, after asking and answering many questions, Jesus smiled. He was calmed, but he kept silence. And then the intellectual candidate inquired more and more. And then Jesus touched his shoulders and said, "When you are ready, come to me so you can help." I guess it answers it all. Jesus was very kind, but he was also firm and determined. He could tell that people were just there because they were not ready. Because if you are in the center, you take it as is. And as you help, you help. You help with your new questions and with your humility, because it takes a lot of pride for people to come into a new organization and thinking that without knowing the ins and outs, they would know more than people who are there. We really should refrain from being that, I would say, presumptuous to knowing more than people who are there. I think it's something that I learned from the very early age when my grandmother was the president of Spiritist Center for 25 years. And she always said, when you go to a center, you respect the order of the center. If you don't agree, you either start helping what they offer, and then you see how you can humbly help them in, but you don't stay there creating a fuss about your ideas, thinking that you know better than the leaders and the people who have been there, because that is very arrogant and it's totally against the principles. Instead, what we recommend, if you don't like it, if you don't approve it, leave and form your center. Form the group in the rules and regulations that you like. Most likely, you will see what we see most often around the world. People leave and they do nothing because they know it's hard. It's very hard work. We're going to go for a short break. When we come back, we're going to discuss the last and most critical part of Kardec's tips and hints about formation of groups.
We will return to our program after these messages.
Let not yourself be deterred.
Slander affected you because you paid attention to it. Calumny harmed you because you gave importance to it. Discord has upset your ideals because you paused to consider it. Hatred has embittered you because of your hurt pride and inflated self-esteem. Dispute hampered your work because you let yourself be entangled in it. Doubt nestled in your mind because you kept yourself in aimless idleness. Accusers live within a low vibrational level. To give them too much attention in order to attract their sympathy is a waste of time. You expected a general approval but did not care to consult with God. If you are striving to do good and others accuse you, if you are generous but people call you a spendthrift, if you are humble and people say you are stupid, if you have self-discipline and people judge you strict, if you meet your duties and others curse you, if you bow in prayer and try to act according to the gospel and people despise you, do not consider their opinions, because that is not what the Almighty Father thinks of you. Do not let other people's opinions deter you. Do not allow yourself to be either afflicted or conflicted by the contradictory opinions of others. Accept only the inspiring suggestions that stimulate your spiritual progress. You will always meet with those who are productive and those who complain, accuse, criticize, and harass. Such people come and go and are soon forgotten, but the work done by those who dedicate themselves to do good will last forever.
And now we return to our program.
Dear listener, we're discussing here the formation of Spiritist groups, and you can find a whole article by Allan Kardec in the Spiritist magazine, online, digital, free of charge. Adriano, I was just mentioning here to John De Rosa and Carlos Diaz during the break that one of the reasons why we emphasize so much the need of being respectful to a Spiritist center, complying with the orders of the center, is mostly because everywhere and elsewhere we go around the world, the coordinators of Spiritist centers always ask us, Vanessa, can you please comment to the practitioners, the workers in our center, how it happens that people cannot just come in just because they were, for example, Spiritists in Brazil. They cannot come to a new Spiritist center elsewhere and say, oh, but in my center in Brazil, we used to do passes this way, but in my center, we used to do that way. And that's mostly the reason why we were saying, if you can't help, what should we do then? John, you're saying?
Oh, yes, the comment is that when you arrive in the center, you should study the center as to what the center's doing, absorb what's happening. Then, after a month or two, then you have the capability and the knowledge to be able to talk about it. You just can't go in, as many of us Americans say, cold turkey and be able to suggest something. It's not respectful.
Yeah. And this is also for us. If you want to help, there is a rule we apply. If you give a suggestion, remember you're the first one to put it in practice. It's actually something that Brother X talks in the very book, Contos e Apólogos, when people were giving ideas, and the president of the center said, so can you guys start it? And he said, oh, no, we can't. Okay, so then we're not going to do it, because if you guys just give ideas, who do you think is going to fulfill these ideas and put them in practice, right?
Yes, that's the best way to stop something like that from happening. You really know when a person is serious when they offer a suggestion and then they volunteer to go through with it.
Exactly. So, Adriano, now we want to talk about the study groups. Allan Kardec talks about how important it is to do study groups, not only do mediumistic group practices. And Elizabeth Mason has here a question. Do the studies in a small group respect the same days and time, even if carried out in one's home? What do you think, Adriano?
I didn't understand well what she asked. Can you repeat it? Sorry.
Yeah. Does the studies in a small group respect the same days and time, even if carried out in one's own home?
Oh, yes, definitely, yes. It's the beginning of a discipline, yeah. Like you said, our God at home, should be exactly the same time, the same day. And as well, the study group, even at home. When we started in our home, it was on Wednesday at 8 p.m. Exactly at 8, not less 1 minute and no more 1 minute after we started the group, no matter what. And we never, closed for holidays or something like this. That should obey for sure. Because when we come to open a spiritual center, we're gonna need that, and not only the spiritual, actually we understand through the spiritist teachings that the higher spirits, they have much work to do in the spiritual realm, and we know that in our study group they're gonna be with us, and we don't have a day, special time reserved. How they gonna come to help us out? So it involves as well the mentors of our group.
Exactly. So let us just listen quickly to what Kardec says in regard to that.
Recently, there has been the formation of special groups, whose multiplication we will never cease to encourage. They are the so-called study groups. In these, they occupy themselves little or nothing with spirit manifestations, but instead with the readings and explanation of the Spirit's book, the Medium's book, and some articles from the Spiritist magazine. Some devoted people bring together this objective and a certain number of listeners in order to lessen their difficulties of reading and studying individually. We applaud with all our hearts this initiative, which we hope will be emulated and cannot, throughout its development, stop producing the happiest results. In these groups, there is no necessity of being an orator or professor. These meetings encompass of reading passages, like in a family setting, followed by explanations without pretensions of eloquence, and are within the reach of all people.
It's amazing what Kardec says. This is like, you see the tone he is giving this talk. It's conversational. And he talks about pretension of eloquence. And unfortunately, that's what makes many people not participate in Spiritist groups or form Spiritist groups, because they think they need to be like profoundly eloquent, and they need to be an orator or professor, and you don't, because these teachings are at the reach of everyone, right, Adriano?
Oh, yes,
you don't need to
sure.
be a PhD to start a group.
Yeah, that Kardec was right. I'm not a professor, I'm not an intellectual, like high advanced person in that regard. And, in our group too, and even though we start a group with, other requirements, is much more helpful. If we are like that, very eloquent or very intellectual, it helps a lot, But if we're not that kind of person, it doesn't matter, because what matters if we go to the Spiritist teachings and really understand that, compare with other books and so on, in dipping ourselves in the teachings, explain them, share them, looking for other help. Sometimes it requires that we need like a more intellectual knowledge, but there are many people around us that have that. We look for them. There are many things that I don't understand, that I call the person, or in my group, I know that they have that kind of intellectual or eloquence. I ask for them. But it's not that's a requirement, for sure.
Exactly. So the thing is, as we just heard about the intellectual candidate, not necessarily being intellectual will help, because as we just saw Jesus, it doesn't pertain to that. So we would encourage anyone who is seriously committed to working on Spiritism, to spreading it, and to studying it, to form a group. And to form a group without pretension of forming a center, because it comes. If it has to come, it will come. Just like happened the Spiritist side of Baltimore, Spiritist side of Virginia, or the Mount Vernon Spiritist Center, majority of groups, you start a group and you just go by. You go by seriously, and if the next step has to come, it comes. But you don't have to form a group hesitating that you lack the skills to coordinate a center, because you don't know, first, if that's the plan of the higher spirits. Two, you don't know if you're going to be around to get to that next level. Seriously, do we know when the ticket back home is going to come up? I don't know. Maybe we're going to discarnate before that happens, right, John?
I think the important thing is you do what you can with where you are.
Exactly. You do the best you can. And talking about the best we can, there is an element that Kardec talks about here when forming groups that is so important. I would say this is mostly recommendable for people who are living elsewhere where Spiritism is not mainstream yet. The need of being open-minded, of opening dialogue, and even studying and trying to understand, being faithful to Spiritism, and encompasses its universality. It's when Kardec talks about being open-minded. Let's listen to his words and talk about it.
But they would incur me in error, those that would judge me exclusive to the point of dismissing other works, in which many surely deserve the sympathy of all good Spiritists. Moreover, in a complete study, it is necessary to examine everything, even that which is bad. I also consider the reading of criticisms to be very useful, for they highlight the emptiness and the lack of logic. Certainly, they do not contain even a single one capable of shaking the faith of a sincere Spiritist. It cannot but strengthen it, as they have fostered in many disbelievers that have compared them.
Adriano, I remember last year when you organized the Spiritist Forum to talk about the power of charity, and you invited the amazing scientist Stephen Post to give a talk amongst us Spiritists, give a talk on his scientific project, It's Good to Be Good. And that would probably exemplify best what Kardec is saying here about the need of being open-minded to do the bridges. Can you share with us your thoughts in that regard?
Oh, yes. We should be very open-minded in a way not to lose the help of many other virtuous or hard-working people, like, say, in the Stephen Post. Much before we invited him, I used to read his works. Actually, his first book, Why Good Things Happen to Good People, I started reading that book. I gave many talks, including many examples used for him in that book. And I read many other books or articles that he wrote, and we ended up learning from him and being sure that he's not only writing things that helps us a lot in the Spiritist Center, but as well practicing in some way what he writes. And then we thought that would be a very good idea to invite him to help us in our work too, as well, giving opportunity for other people to really broaden their knowledge, including like Stephen Post's knowledge about charity, altruism, and his work in the science field. And it was very, very nice, because after the event, we saw many good results that people came to share with us regarding his talk, and actually we've sold or gave many books that we purchased from him, and people read them. And even today, after 1 year and something, we actually use some of his text or writings, articles, to illustrate or to compare with Spiritism. It helps a lot. Not only him, there are many others that we use in our Spiritist Center to really, help us.
So Kardec is encouraging us to read about, to talk about, to compare, etc. Right? And I have here John De Rosa, who also he has been at the Spiritist out of Virginia, but you also are affiliated with other organizations like the Church of the Essenes in Bethesda. And how do you feel about the Kardec being so open-minded, encouraging us to create these dialogues?
Well, it's an interesting question, because I think the more exposure you have to organizations that practice the same charity and fraternalness, homeless feedings, you just go on and on. Another perfect example is community-supported agriculture. You see how interrelated everything is in life, and Kardec was just wonderful in laying this particular Spiritism out. And practically every meeting I have, I can go back to something else that I've learned in, say, Vedic astrology or yoga science, and find interrelated items.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So it reminds me of an article that was brought in. It's phenomenal, and it's in English in the magazine. Just came out in this current issue. We purposely have the translation of this article in the magazine, the 500 of Galilee, that talks about the description of the very moment in which Jesus appeared to 500 people, They say, it's like the resurrection, right? And he gave a whole speech to them, and the whole speech is there, written down. It's the 500 of Galilee in the SpiritistMagazine.com. And at the very end, what we like the most is what Brother X says. He says that those 500 people who were there witnessing that, materialization of Jesus, or resurrection for others who like better the term, it's beyond that discussion now. They were to be sent, he says, to the different fields of arts, sciences, religions, and philosophies. I think that closes the discussion for all those who think that this message came just for a few. It came for everyone. It's in all different fields of human knowledge, not only in Spiritism. So one more reason for us not to be sectarian. When we form a group, if we are in the United States, people come to our group and talk about John of God. Get to know John of God, because you need to know to talk about it. And you cannot say simply dismiss it, oh, this is not Spiritism. We need to talk about it. What is it? People talk about Deepak Chopra. Okay, read about it, get to know about it, and build the bridges, because we have the universality of the teachings, and a good study group is the one that is capable and fearless in regards to studying it all and retaining what is best. And this is actually the Apostle Paul's words and recommendations. Read it all and retain what is best. And that's what we need to do.
It's interesting that you mentioned that, because John of God is what actually led me to meet up with you guys in Spiritism. One of the members of my yoga group, the Community Support Agricultural Group, they have so many different interests, but they went down to visit John of God, and they came back, and I started reading about John of God, and it led me to Spiritism.
That's majority of the cases of Americans nowadays, I would say. Majority of American friends who come to Spiritist centers, they come because John of God opened the doors for them, whether people like it or not, whether he says he's a Spiritist or not. It doesn't matter. That's how it's working, and we needed to know what it is to build bridges, communicate without pretension that we're the sole retainers of truth, because we are not. Right, Adriano?
Oh, yes, definitely, yes. We're not telling that, responsibly we just go there and pick up a book or a person that we don't know his work or her work, and just bring in for us. We first of all we have to study, the writing, the work of the person, and if it's good or bad, doesn't matter, but we have to know what we're talking about and open for it. And after we, analyze the work, we should bring it. If it is bad, to study group, just to say, people, we're talking about it, and we're going to see here comparing to Spiritism teachings is not that, we think that it is, or otherwise if it is good, or we see here that we're going to talk that this person is, in case, and let's give the case of Stephen Post, he's doing a good job. He's really helping us in some ways, helping humanity. He's, the same truth, because the truth is for everyone on earth. The Spirit is not the owner of the truth, that people may think that it is. It's for everyone in that way. We should be open for everything. And to be open, for sure, we need to study very hard. Otherwise, we'll be, we don't understand even the other works. If we study hard, understand Spiritism, it'll be very, easy to even understand some scientific works that it's beyond our current study. And it's very interesting how it happens. I'm not a scientist, but these people, they write for lay, sometimes for lay, people. And we are very hard-working case of studying, we might understand all them well, and we will, get the advantage of their work.
All right. So now we need your final comments, Adriano and John, in regards to Kardec's tips on the formation of Spiritist groups and societies. Adriano.
Well, the first comment is that we should revise as many times as we need to really get the idea sinking in ourselves before opening a Spiritist group. I used to say for months now that a good idea, learning or single idea needs at least 50 hours of reflection on it. In the case of opening a Spiritist group, in each of these steps here, we need at least more than 50 hours of reflection on it. Years, I would say, in hard working on it. And just to wrap what I'm saying, I have an example of mine that it happens when we open a Spiritist group. One of the time I was going to the other Spiritist center that I was participating in, it was a very hard day for me. I would walk half hour to the subway, to take the subway, and it was coming out a very heavy storm of snow, and it picked me up in the road walking, and I was with no cap in my head. It was very cold, and it was freezing in the middle of my walk to the subway, and I stopped for a shelter in a building, and then came up to my mind, the Spirit was telling me that's what it is to participate in the Spiritist Center. It's just something that you're gonna see, in a moral way, in a hardship way, that you're gonna face the Spiritist Center, and that's what happened. Opening a Spiritist Center is just, going through that storms. That sometimes we have the shelter, and that shelter is for sure Jesus and the good spirits. We are not abandoned, but we need to face the storms that really gonna provide us with the necessary skills to go through the work.
All right, John.
The beauty of it is it's all laid out for us. The hard work, the effort has all been done. So following the formula, finding serious people, starting a study group, making sure that you study long enough, and then possibly expanding into a center. Again, it's all there for us. We just need to be disciplined enough to follow through with it.
Exactly. So thank you so much, Adriano. Thank you, John, for being here with us at Kardec Radio today. And thanks, Kardec, for the amazing comments he brings to us and the tips. We have it all there. You just go to the spiritistmagazine.com, the latest issue, issue 19. You have the whole article about it. And he mentions the Medium's book, chapters 29 and 30, for very serious and thorough tips and hints about formation of Spiritist groups and societies. For now, dear listener, we're going to give a break, but when we come back, the show is not over because we still have beautiful, beautiful segments by Kirsten DeMello on the law of labor, by Nera Venditti. Dr. Venditti is now bringing to us the tips on the importance of cultural competency, which is so vital for us in the world today, both professionally and personally speaking, followed by Bernadette Liao's moment on how to teach love to children, and Naur Fonseca and Gabi Ferreira will finalize the show with a beautiful passage from the book Jesus in the Home, which is their session entitled God at Home, followed by our final prayer for the show today. We'll be right back after the break.
We will return to our program after these messages.
Come and join us in 3 amazing events this November. The renowned magistrate and Spiritist scholar Dr. Haroldo Dutra Diaz will be the keynote speaker in 3 events. Sunday, November 4th from 1 p.m. to 5 p.m. at the Date Hotel and Conference Center in Westchester, Pennsylvania. This event will be dedicated to the Spiritist view on cancer and healing. Dr. Marco Magalhães and Dr. Vanessa Anceloni will also share the stage with Dr. Dutra Diaz. This event is free admission, and you will also enjoy a beautiful and inspirational Spiritist music and art festival. Don't miss it. Tuesday, November 5th, Haroldo Dutra Diaz will speak at the University of Maryland in Baltimore on the healing parables. And on Wednesday, November 6th, he will speak on the Apostle Paul for Spiritist Practitioners at the Spiritist Society of Virginia Center. For more information, go to www.ssvirginia.org today.
And now we return to our program.
Hello, dear Kardec Radio friends and listeners. We give continuation to our study on the moral laws and divine laws, Part 3 of the Spirit's book. We're still studying about the law of labor. An interesting topic today, we're going to address children and this natural law. But let us first go to an interesting educator, the renowned, well-known Dr. Maria Montessori. She was actually an Italian physician who became very well known with her studies and her educational tactics with children. And very interesting, she wrote a book called The Secret of Childhood. And let us quote from that book when she says the following, that, we quote, "The social question of childhood penetrates deeply into our inner lives, rousing our consciences and stirring us to act. A child is not a stranger, one simply to be observed from outside. Rather, childhood constitutes the most important element in an adult's life, for it is in his early years that a man is made. The well-being of the adult is intimately connected to the kind of life he had when he was a child." And this is very interesting because we read the books in Spiritism when we study, for instance, the book entitled Family Constellation that was psychographed by Divaldo Franco by the spirit Joanna de Angelis, and she talks about the necessity of observing our child's tendencies from a very young age in order to mold him or her to a better way, to a better pathway, and also bringing out all their good points within them, all their strong points. So it's interesting, it's not by chance that this great, renowned child educator, Dr. Maria Montessori, who's still recognized today and has many schools that use her thoughts and theory of educating children, that we utilize this so we realize the importance of the education in the childhood years. So we go to question 681 of the Spirit's book, and the question is posed like this: does the law of nature impose upon children the obligation to work for their parents? And this is an interesting question. Before we read the answer, oftentimes, perhaps as parents, or perhaps as educators, or perhaps just as adults, maybe our mindset is that children must work for us and children just must work in general. But it's very uplifting, it's very educational what the spirits tell us, because they say the following, and we quote the Spirit's answer: "Certainly, as parents must work for their children, that is the reason why God has made filial love and parental love a natural sentiment, in order that by such reciprocal affection the members of the same family may be led to mutually help each other. This is frequently not recognized in your present society." And let us think of the time frame also that these words were said. It was said in a time in the 1850s, 60s, 70s, 80s, and moving forward when this book was first originally studied and read, where children weren't respected, at least not as they are today with all the modern day research. And that's why also Dr. Maria Montessori in 1905, 1906, in the early 1900s, when she came out with her books and studies about children, she was criticized. This idea that we have to give special attention to our children, and this monumental idea that the spirits bring to us that we as parents must also work for our children. You can imagine that that idea at that time was very scandalous in so many ways. But nowadays it's much more common, this idea of educating our children, especially within the Spiritist thought and belief, that the necessity that our children are like sponges and we need to mold them with proper moral education. And also deriving that thought from initially the beginning part of this chapter, when the spirits tell us that every useful occupation is labor, it's important for us also as parents, as educators, to help our children to be as useful as possible and to teach them that work is a blessing. So, dear friends, we leave you with these thoughts until next week, when we continue our study on the law of labor.
Hi, this is Narvin Didi with Succeed in America by Packaging Your Brilliance and Building Cross-Cultural Competency. Our topic today is categorizing cultures. When we talk about cultures, we must first distinguish different categories of cultures. One way is to distinguish cultures by communication styles, direct and indirect. Effective communication is the biggest challenge for multicultural teams in business and in personal life, say in cross-cultural marriages. Most Americans fall under the direct category. Direct communicators prefer to say what is on their mind. Simply put, they say what they mean and they mean what they say. They also deal with conflict promptly and directly. Direct communicators fall under low-context cultures. In low-context cultures, such as much of Scandinavia, Russia, Baltics, Germany, and the United States, there is a great reliance on explicit verbal messages to transmit meaning. Less attention is paid to contextual cues, such as physical setting, relative status of the parties involved, nonverbal signals, and length of the relationship. In contrast, indirect communicators or high-context cultures, such as many Middle Eastern, Asian, and Latin American cultures, derive meaning not from explicit verbal or written messages, but from contextual factors, such as setting in which communication is taking place, status of individuals involved, nonverbal signals, and the strength of relationships. Communication may therefore seem much more implicit, indirect, and attuned to feelings in high-context cultures. People from high-context cultures will carefully choose the words to avoid offense and losing face, and they will speak around an issue. They will deal with conflict indirectly and rely on nonverbal cues to interpret and communicate messages. Another broad way to categorize cultures is categorizing them as collectivistic and individualistic. Do we see ourselves as individuals first and then as the members of the group? Or do we see ourselves first as the members of the group and then as individuals? For instance, American mainstream culture tends to be individualistic. On the other hand, Japanese culture, as many other Asian, Latin American, African, and Middle Eastern cultures, are collectivistic. Now, how this affects interaction in business? Here's one example and lessons learned from Fukushima nuclear disaster, which was labeled by the Japanese Parliamentary Commission as made in Japan or man-made. While we do need to remember that the accident was caused by the enormous earthquake and tsunami, the Commission report labeled it as man-made or made in Japan. As Chairman Koichi Kurokawa explained, fundamental causes of the disaster are to be found in the ingrained conventions of Japanese culture. Our obedience, our reluctance to question authority, our devotion to sticking with a program, our groupism. In other words, collectivism. So this is Nara Venditi with Succeed in America by packaging your brilliance and building cross-cultural competencies. If you have any questions, please email me at nara@succeedinamerica.com. That is NARA@SUCCEED in America.com. And thank you for listening.
Good morning, dear Kardec radio listeners, and welcome to one more program with God at Home. I am Nauro Fonseca.
And I am Gabi Ferreira. Today's lesson is from the book Jesus in the Home by the Spirit Neo Lúcio and psychographed by Chico Xavier, and it's entitled Victorious Faith.
In today's world, there are many faiths, different political parties, diverse nations. Oftenly, these groups hold on to opposite views about religion, society, or international relations. And sadly, the aggressive discourse usually escalates to other forms of violence.
In the time of Jesus, things were not very different. Judaism was divided in many sects, whole tribes were discriminated, and people with opposing religious views were persecuted.
Jesus' disciples as an obstacle to spread the new redemptive principles of Christ, and one night they were passionately discussing a way to organize a movement to resist the attacks from the Pharisees.
Jesus, however, had been listening with imperturbable tolerance to the angry discussion, and as soon as he got everyone quieted down, he asserted,
"No school of religion will triumph with the Father if it is devoid of love, which is our responsibility to cultivate toward one another."
And perhaps because a justified expectation was expressed, he began very calmly.
In the times of early faith, 3 primitive men settled with their families in a large forest, and after having lived in fraternal harmony for a time, they began to argue about the nature of the Creator. One of them insisted that the Almighty lived in the thunder, another believed that the Father resided in the wind, and the third that he lived in the sun. All 3 of them felt they were his sons, but they wanted at all costs to stick to their own individual opinions.
After harsh verbal altercations, they turned to fighting openly. One of the 3 was armed with a large supply of ore, another with a great pile of stones, and the third had hidden behind a pile of wood. Thus, pieces of firewood and crude stones were the weapons they would use in the great conflict.
All of them invoked the protection of the Supreme Lord for their families, and then they threw themselves into the fray. The conflict escalated to the point that they went throughout the forest, harming both trees and animals, until the all-compassionate one sent them a friendly angel.
The messenger visited their forts in the guise of an ordinary man, and instead of taking away the tools with which they were destroying living things, he told them that all 3 of their traditions were invaluable in their own way. He told them that they only needed to take a new approach. He explained that all 3 were right in the belief that nourished their souls, because God lives in the sun that sustains his creatures, in the wind that helps nature, and in the thunder that renews the atmosphere. And with a lot of patience, he explained that the Creator can only be honored by means of dignified and profitable work, by teaching the first one to transform the hard pieces of ore into tools with which to till the earth during the planting season. The second one by converting his wood into valuable pieces for well-being. The third by using his stones to build comfortable shelters. To everything was to be added the good doctrine of working for everyone's progress and evolution. The 3 contenders thus understood the greatness of victorious faith through constructive acts and the discord ended for good.
The Master made a short pause and added, "In matters of religion, all believers have respectable reasons for holding to it, and they have invaluable abilities that should be made use of to enhance life and time, thereby glorifying the Father. For this very reason, faith that does not help, teach, or console is no more than dark vanity of the heart." In closing, I would like to call your attention to the way that the angel helped the primitive man. He could have taken the weapons from the fighters, but instead he used a more powerful weapon, his words. Words have lifted up civilization just as they have driven multitudes to war and destruction. So whenever you see a situation of conflict, let's take this advice from Joana de Angelis. Use words to rescue, encouraging those who have fallen to get back up, those who are asleep to awaken, those in error to correct themselves, and the aggressive to calm down. Speak with elevation and kindness. Make yourself a faithful microphone in the service of goodness.
Welcome to our Youth Education in Spiritism with Kardec Radio. I am Bernadette Leal, and I'll be spending a few minutes with you, inspiring to bring spiritual awareness and Spiritist teachings to our youth, parents, and educators. Today we'll continue talking about love. In our previous program, we answered two questions. How can I teach my child about love? And how can I help my child to practice love? So today's question is, where should my child start practicing love? Children start feeling loved and practicing love at home, mainly among family members. It is through the interaction with parents, siblings, and relatives that children will begin to exercise love, learning how to care for the ones they love. It is at home that children will find some challenges, but also wonderful opportunities to practice patience, understanding, kindness, and forgiveness, which are all expressions of love. Spiritism reminds us of the importance of family ties. It is through the blessings of reincarnation that mothers and fathers, brothers and sisters, husbands and wives are living now together to grow in love. Some of them may have a painful past life history of suffering, betrayal, or caused serious harm to someone. But thankfully, the Creator in His unconditional love gives us innumerable opportunities to all of us to be united again so we can progress and truly learn how to love one another. Because of their past life experience, children may struggle to interact with some members of their family in the present life. This can be noticed by observing the child's behavior in his relationship with their close ones. You may ask yourself, how can my child be hostile toward her father at an early age if all I taught him was to love and be kind to his father? Well, such behavior may not make sense if we consider only the present lifetime. Fortunately, the Spiritist teachings remove the veil from our eyes, bringing us clarity and explaining that the life of a child and his father may be bonded in previous reincarnations. This explains why a child may show some negative feelings and hostility toward a member of a family. Chapter 14 of the Gospel According to Spiritism by Allan Kardec helps us to understand it by saying, don't give up on a child who rejects a parent or treats a parent with ingratitude. It is not by chance that this child is this way. Nor is it an accident that the child is under your care. Such reactions often reveal a dim intuition of the past, from which fact we can conclude that one or the other, the parent or the child, may have hated or harmed the other in the past. We understand that it's not always easy to act in a loving way, merely for some children who have been raised in a dysfunctional family and feel unloved. You may think, how can we love a brother or a sister or a parent who has been not a positive and a loving person in our lives? Oh, dear listeners, what a blessing we have in front of us when that is the situation. Remember, the person who we struggle the most to love is the one that will help our spiritual progress, allowing us to perfect our spirit. A good way to help our children to love others is by bringing them awareness that love is not only an emotion or a feeling, but in fact a verb. Yes, love is an action verb. Therefore, it involves movement. It is not about sitting and waiting to be loved. Love is not passive, but active. Think of love as a muscle in our body that needs to exercise in order to stretch more and become stronger. Many sportsmen do not excel in their sports overnight. They started with small steps, having discipline, and focusing on what they wanted. They had challenges sometimes, got even hurt, but they did not give up because they had an important goal, choosing to put a great amount of effort into it. So come on, let's all exercise our love muscle and help our children to get ready for their love journey as they wake up every morning. Wouldn't it be wonderful if someone asked us, what kind of sports do you play? And we would answer, love. Or, do you have a passion in life? And we would say, absolutely, it is love. Or, tell me, what are you good at? And we would answer, I am good at loving. Kardec radio listeners, Mother Teresa, give us a great example of love in action. One day, as she walked on the streets, she saw a homeless woman in pain and in need of help. She quickly approached the woman and helped her. The woman then asked Mother Teresa, what's your religion? And she said, my religion is love. And the woman continued, who is your God? And Mother Teresa answered, my God is you. And she explained, how can I love God if I don't love the ones that are near me? The woman then asked a third question, why are you doing this? And she answered, because now I know Jesus. Dear listeners, we invite you to reflect upon this story and share it with your children. And we would like to finish today's segment with one of Mother Teresa's many beautiful quotes, as she said, not all of us can do great things, but we can do small things with great love. Thanks for listening to Yes. Until next week, where we'll continue talking about love.
Dear listener, we hope you have enjoyed the show. We hope it provided new resources, new food, new nourishment for your soul. After all, we are here not only to live this day, but also to prepare us for the next day into our lives, into our immortal lives, and to express our gratitude and bring us to the final moments of this show. We invite you to a prayer. Let us think of our dear, loving God. Mother, Father God, not only you created us, but also counts on our participation as co-creators to build the kingdom of yours in our hearts, sharing the talents, the gifts, the love you give us with everyone in our lives. And we pray at this moment that everyone who listens to these programs, or even those who don't listen to this, that they receive your shower of blessings with greater awareness, because we know that you bless us irrespective of our awareness. But when we are aware, it just multiplies in itself. May we get to know more about how to better fulfill your will on earth, as it already is in heaven, and would like to express our gratitude especially to Allan Kardec for his devotion, seriousness, dedication to bringing about the Spiritist teachings that have transformed so many lives around the world, and promises to clarify the laws of God by the use of our reasoning and by refining our feelings. May especially those who are suffering on the earth, whether they are plants, animals, or human beings, may they receive these blessings that we now ask you to multiply in your abundant love, so they suffer less, bringing them relief, solutions for their problems, whether material, moral, or spiritual. In your blessings shall we stay, today and always, and so be it. Dear listener, in a week we will be back with also a most special show. It's about the spiritual plan that God has put together, Jesus as the divine messenger for the United States of America. And we're going to dedicate the show also to pray for the United States of America, as we are pre-election. Though we don't take sides, because we are Spiritists and we shouldn't take sides, politically speaking, though we personally have a choice. But we're going to pray next week and dedicate the show to this country that has the most beautiful mission, and we shall all help out so it come true. After all, it's the willingness of God that it's to be fulfilled. We wish you many blessings.
Thank you for listening to Kardec Radio, broadcasting live every Saturday morning at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Email us and share your comments at www.kardecradio.com. Until next time, we wish you many blessings.